Luxury has always been believed to be craftsmanship, unquestionable quality, and a guarantee that the product would last. Customers held designer labels to a higher standard, trusting that they were buying excellence, but that promise is beginning to crumble. Because behind the catchy marketing and hefty price tags, some of the most revered luxury names are suddenly facing a nightmare few expected: mass recalls. Right now, 9 major luxury brands are issuing recalls in the United States, not 1 or 2 items, but entire product lines, because of real, serious defects that risk safety, value, or durability. That affects tens of thousands of owners. Clients who invested $5,000 or more for supposed perfection are being caught in a state of limbo. This isn't about margins or marketing oversights. It is about a deep breakdown in quality control, a betrayal of trust. The brands once thought to be the epitome of fashion are now scrambling to manage public outrage. In this video, we'll expose those 9 brands, explaining what went wrong and why you should stop buying from them right now, until they prove they've fixed the problem. Here's a list of them. Number 9. Hermès, the French luxury house. Hermès found itself in a serious legal challenge in 2024. In March of that year, a group of United States consumers filed a class action complaint in California. They claimed Hermès used the enormous popularity of its high-end Birkin handbags, which are highly desirable, always in demand, but produced in very limited numbers, to unfairly increase prices and profits. Under the complaint, the plaintiffs said Hermès was not simply selling Birkins to anyone who walked in. Instead, Hermès allegedly offered Birkins only to customers who already had a purchase history with the brand, meaning those who had bought other Hermès products before. This history could include items such as shoes, scarves, belts, jewelry, home goods, or other accessories. The complaint described this as a kind of tying, a business practice where purchase of one product is effectively conditioned on purchase of other products, the ancillary products. The plaintiffs argued that this practice gave Hermès unfair market power, because when supply is low and demand is incredibly high, Hermès could exploit that imbalance. They claimed that forcing consumers to buy unrelated items first artificially inflated the cost of getting a Birkin and limited real competition and choice. According to the court filing, one plaintiff reportedly had already spent tens of thousands of dollars at Hermès and even owned at least one Birkin bag. Yet when she tried to buy another in 2022, she was told only clients who have been consistent in supporting the business could be shown a Birkin. The other named plaintiff said he repeatedly tried to buy a Birkin, but was told each time to first purchase other accessories before he could even get a chance at a bag, and ended up with nothing. Hermès defended itself by rejecting the notion that its practices constituted any type of antitrust violation, false advertising, fraud, or negligent misrepresentation. Instead, Hermès said the complaint actually stemmed from plaintiffs' frustration at not being able to buy additional Birkins, especially for resale, rather than from legitimate legal grievances. They argued that the Birkin sells in a competitive luxury market, and that prioritizing loyal or high-spending customers is not illegal. The lawsuit highlights a key tension in the world of ultra-luxury goods. Where exclusivity and scarcity are part of what defines value, is it fair or even legal for a brand to gatekeep access in a way that limits who can buy based on prior spending? As of the latest filings, Hermès was pushing for dismissal of the case in its entirety. However, the court's decision will likely determine whether the mix of prestige, demand, and limited supply can legally be managed the way Hermès has long done. And here's a brand that seemed untouchable until the fast pace at which the world is changing affected it. Number 8. Ralph & Russo. Ralph & Russo, once a shining star among modern luxury fashion houses, announced on April 14, 2025 that it intended to appoint administrators, a clear sign that the brand is once again on the verge of collapse. Founded in London, the house rapidly grew into a global luxury brand, known for couture gowns, bridal dresses, ready-to-wear collections, accessories, and red carpet fashion. It gained elite status partly thanks to high-profile clients and media exposure. In 2017, the brand made headlines when the then-fiancé of a prominent royal figure wore a £56,000 couture gown from Ralph and Russo for her official engagement portraits, cementing the house's reputation for glamour and high fashion. But trouble started when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. The global lockdowns and cancellation of events devastated the demand for couture gowns, evening wear, and luxury dresses, core parts of Ralph and Russo's business. Without red carpet events, galas, and ceremonies, the house lost a major portion of its market. As a result, in March 2021, Ralph and Russo was placed into administration, a formal process for companies that can't meet their financial obligations but hope to restructure. The company said it would continue operating during the process. At that time, administrators from firms Begbie's Traynor and Quantuma were appointed to oversee restructuring. Later in 2021, the brand was acquired by a United States investment firm, Retail E-Commerce Ventures, REV, founded by entrepreneurs Ty Lopez and Alex Mayer. The acquisition was meant to inject new resources and help revive Ralph and Russo as a global luxury brand. However, that revival was short-lived. By April 2025, Ralph and Russo was once again facing financial collapse. The company filed for creditor protection, a formal step that often preludes full insolvency, by signaling its intention to appoint administrators again. The pattern is almost tragic. A couture house that once clothed royalty and graced red carpets around the world now struggles just to survive. Many industry observers note that it is almost as if one keeps seeing someone touch a hot stove over and over. You know it will end badly, yet you cannot look away. The house that once carried a glamorous heritage now teeters under financial strain, uncertain if it can hold on. Now, here's a brand whose glitz masked serious flaws so serious that analysts are strongly calling it out. Number 7. Marks & Spencer, M&S. In recent years, the second-hand clothes trade to Africa has grown a lot. In 2024 to 2025, a wave of reports exposed a harsh truth. Many of the used clothes shipped from Western retailers to Ghana are not reused or recycled. They become waste. Among the brands implicated was Marks & Spencer. Activists and environmental campaigners, especially the OR Foundation, have linked Marks & Spencer's exports to a growing environmental and social crisis in Ghana. Ghana, and particularly its capital, Accra, receives huge volumes of second-hand garments every week. Estimates suggest up to 15 million used items arrive weekly for sale or distribution in markets such as Kantamanto Market. But many of those clothes are already worn out or cheaply made. They are not fit for reuse. According to the OR Foundation, around 40% of all imported clothing becomes immediate waste. What that means on the ground is alarming. Large piles of waste accumulate in informal dump sites, some inside or very near protected wetlands and sensitive ecosystems. For instance, recent investigations found clothing bearing Marks & Spencer labels dumped in the wetlands of Densu Delta, a Ramsar-recognized wetland area. Waste also washes up on riverbanks, beaches, and into local waterways, blocking drains, choking fishing nets, and damaging marine habitats. Because so much waste arrives weekly, and Ghana lacks robust infrastructure to properly manage it, the environmental damage and human health risks are severe. The local authorities struggle to keep up. Often clothing waste is burnt or dumped in open landfills, where decaying fabric and synthetic fibers release microplastics and toxic waste. This pollution threatens aquatic life and endangers the health of people living near dump sites or wetlands. Moreover, the flood of cheap second-hand clothes undermines local textile and fashion industries. When imported used garments are abundant and cheap, or free, they outcompete locally made clothes. Local tailors and small clothing producers find it hard to survive. Activists call this phenomenon textile colonialism, because it mirrors old patterns of exploitative trade. Wealthier countries ship their waste to poorer countries, draining local economies while externalizing waste and pollution. Some brands, including Marks and Spencer, have responded by pointing to recycling or take-back schemes. But critics argue those efforts are insufficient. They do not address the core of the problem, which is that brands and sellers rely on dumping massive volumes of unwanted clothes far from the places where they were produced or consumed. In 2025, the problem remains urgent as new dump sites continue to appear, even inside protected wetlands. In Ghana, many people increasingly demand accountability from brands like Marks and Spencer. They call on Western retailers to stop exporting vast quantities of used clothes to countries that lack capacity to handle waste, and to take responsibility for the environmental damage linked to their products. For consumers and brands in the West, the crisis raises serious ethical questions about fast fashion, waste, and global inequality. Next is a brand that once promised unrivaled quality, but now recalls have spread so far, its name echoes as a warning at every checkout lane. Number 6. Gucci. In 2024, a former salesperson turned plaintiff brought a major lawsuit against Gucci and its parent company Kering over exotic skin products. The case, filed under Illinois Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Business Practices Act, ICFA, in Illinois, alleges that Gucci misled customers by marketing items made from snake or crocodile skin as ethically sourced, when in fact, suppliers engaged in cruel practices. Specifically, the plaintiff, a former sales associate at a Gucci store, claimed that she was trained to present exotic skin products to customers in a selling ceremony. During that presentation, she was told to assert that the skins came from animals not subjected to torture, that harvesting was humane, or that it was a byproduct of the meat industry. Based on those statements, both she and customers bought the products believing they were cruelty-free. But in March 2024, the plaintiff learned from news reports and NGO revelations that suppliers, particularly in Thailand, had allegedly subjected pythons and crocodiles to brutal slaughter and skinning practices. That discovery, she claims, showed that Gucci's representations were false. In October 2024, a federal judge in Illinois denied Gucci's motion to dismiss the lawsuit, meaning the case could proceed under the ICFA and unjust enrichment claims against Gucci. However, the court dismissed the claim against Kering, ruling that the parent company lacked sufficient personal jurisdiction because it had insufficient ties to Illinois. Hence, Gucci remains under legal pressure to answer the allegations. The lawsuit argues that Gucci profited unjustly by marketing exotic skin goods under false pretenses. They drew premium prices due to claims of ethical sourcing, while in reality, those claims were allegedly hollow. This case highlights a broader issue in luxury fashion. Many brands depend on complex supply chains, often offshore, where monitoring ethical standards is difficult. When companies tout ethically sourced exotic materials, consumers often trust those claims. But investigations like this one raise serious doubts about transparency. For a brand like Gucci, whose identity is built around status, craftsmanship, and price, the gap between marketing and reality can be damaging. Moreover, the case shows that consumers and former employees can challenge luxury brands legally when they believe claims of ethical sourcing are misleading. The fact that the courtroom allowed the complaint to proceed signals that courts may increasingly scrutinize marketing claims about exotic materials, animal welfare, and sourcing transparency. If the plaintiff succeeds, or if Gucci chooses to settle, it could force not only Gucci, but other luxury brands relying on exotic skins to reevaluate their supply chains. They might face pressure to show evidence of humane sourcing, to adopt better oversight, or to abandon certain materials altogether. And for the fashion industry, the lawsuit is a warning that the cost of misleading claims may not only be reputational, it can be legal and financial too. Number 5 is a luxury name whose glossy ads couldn't hide the recall notices in almost every state. Number 5. Balenciaga. The recent uproar around Balenciaga began with its gift shop campaign, a set of images released publicly, featuring children holding teddy bear handbags dressed in attire that many interpreted as bondage gear. The bears wore items such as fishnet tops and leather harnesses, and in some shots, children were placed in unusual, even disturbing poses. For instance, one image showed a child laying face down on a couch with the teddy bear bag positioned behind them, a visual that struck many as odd given the presence of a child. The campaign included other items like necklaces, sunglasses, chains, candles, wine glasses, and duct tape scattered around the children. The combination of these props with the children triggered immediate backlash. Critics on social media suggested that the visual choices were more than just poor taste. Some claimed the props and arrangement alluded to bondage paraphernalia, while a few flagged what they believed were symbolic references. In one image, they said the duct tape displayed the brand name misspelled in a way that read Balenciaga, positing that this was a deliberate reference to the demon Baal. They also pointed out a sketch in the background of a photo, reportedly showing a red figure and red shoes on one child, interpreting these as demonic or occult references. While these allegations are sensational, they underscored the intensity of public discomfort and suspicion toward the campaign's tone. Only days later, a second controversy erupted when images from the 2023 Garderobe advertising campaign surfaced. This campaign, which featured public figures like Bella Hadid, Nicole Kidman, and Isabel Huppert in an office-like setting, included what appeared to be real court documents related to a major United States Supreme Court case on child exploitation. Critics seized on this inclusion as evidence that the brand's first campaign was not simply a misunderstanding or error, but possibly part of a deeper, more troubling aesthetic or message. Facing mounting outrage, Balenciaga responded publicly. The company apologized, admitting the teddy bear bag should not have been featured with children and acknowledging that including those items was a wrong choice. They also removed the controversial images from all their social media platforms. The brand described their presence in the campaign as the result of reckless negligence and announced legal action against the responsible production team. But even their apology and decision to pursue legal recourse was overshadowed by the severity of public reaction. The backlash was not only about a misguided fashion campaign, many viewed it as a violation of moral boundaries, particularly in how children were depicted. For a global brand like Balenciaga, whose reputation rests heavily on aesthetic boldness, exclusivity, and high fashion credibility, this scandal struck at the heart of its brand identity. To begin to salvage its reputation, Balenciaga announced a 3-year partnership with National Children's Alliance to support children who have suffered trauma. Still, the damage to its public image is deep. A brand's principles and values often form the emotional connection customers have with it. When such values appear compromised, recovery becomes long and uncertain. In this case, many observers remain skeptical that Balenciaga can easily regain trust and distance itself from the scandal. Next is a brand that built trust over decades, only to see that trust unravel when a wave of modern luxury hits without mercy. Number 4. Hudson's Bay Company, HBC. Hudson's Bay has roots stretching back to 1670, making it one of the oldest retailers in the world. Through the centuries, it weathered wars, economic depressions, and even pandemics. Yet in 2025, after 355 years in business, the company finally shuttered. The downfall began in March 2025, when HBC filed for creditor protection, citing heavy financial strain brought on by changing consumer behaviors, slow post-pandemic recovery, and trade tensions affecting its supply chain and costs. At the time of filing, Hudson's Bay operated about 80 stores under its own banner, along with a number of outlets under associated brands, such as Saks Fifth Avenue and Saks Off Fifth, across Canada. The strategy under creditor protection was to liquidate most stores while salvaging whatever parts of the business remained viable by finding buyers or restructuring assets. Despite efforts to secure buyers and negotiate lease transfers, the restructuring attempts failed. Meanwhile, an Ontario Superior Court judge rejected a proposed bailout deal early in the process, a decision that undermined HBC's ability to maintain operations. In the end, the company moved ahead with liquidation. By June 1, 2025, all Hudson's Bay stores were officially closed. More than 8,000 employees lost their jobs, roughly 90% of its workforce. Only a few dozen remained to complete store closure tasks and dissolve distribution operations. One of the last pieces of the Hudson's Bay legacy, its trademarks, brand imagery, and intellectual property, was sold to another Canadian retailer, Canadian Tire. The deal, reportedly worth $30 million, transferred rights to the iconic Hudson's Bay name, its recognizable multicolored stripes motif, coat of arms, and sub-brands including Distinctly Home, Hudson North, and others. For many, the end of a 355-year-old company underscores how drastically retail and shopping habits have changed. Traditional department store models have struggled to adapt to the digital age and shifting consumer preferences, especially among younger generations, where once families shopped in grand, multi-level stores with broad assortments, many now shortcut directly to online shops or nimble specialty retailers. And HBC simply could not withstand those shifts. The liquidation process also triggered a broader reckoning about the cost of legacy institutions in a changing world. HBC had become more than a store. Over centuries, it played a role in shaping commerce, culture, and community identity in Canada. Its closure signals not just the end of a retailer, but the end of a long chapter in commercial history. The shutdown is a reminder that no brand is immune to systemic change. And brand number 3? Its designs once defined status, yet now they define risk as finances run dangerously low. Number 3. Castle, Inc. Once seen as a rising star in the clothing as a service movement, Castle ended up filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in Delaware in June 2025. A full liquidation of the company less than a year after raising eyebrows with the sudden departure of its CEO. Castle began its journey under the name Gwynnie B., founded around 2011 to offer size-inclusive clothing rentals, filling a gap for plus-size consumers underserved in traditional fashion retail. Over time, the company moved away from direct rental subscriptions to becoming a back-end platform. Other retailers could license Castle's technology, logistics, and warehousing to launch their own rental or subscription clothing services. By this shift, Castle positioned itself not just as a brand, but as a provider of infrastructure, a rental-as-a-service engine for many established fashion players. At its peak, Castle raised hundreds of millions in funding. Reports suggest total capital raised exceeded $530 million, with the last major round around 2019. The company painted itself as a major disruptor, promising to revolutionize how people use fashion. Unlimited closet access, flexibility, and sustainability through reuse rather than fast consumption. For many, the model had both practical and ethical appeal. Yet behind the ambition, cracks began to show. In early 2025, media reports revealed the company was in financial distress. The board of directors confirmed cash was running dangerously low. The company laid off employees, signaling that operations could not continue normally. The crisis culminated in March when the CEO, Christine Hunsicker, resigned abruptly, reportedly in response to mounting investigations into the company's financials. Soon after, in June 2025, Castle filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The filing reportedly listed between $10 million and $50 million in both assets and liabilities, and nearly 1,000 creditors seeking claims. With the liquidation process underway, the remaining operations were to be overseen by a board member, a far cry from the once bright vision the company projected. The issue worsened in mid-2025 when prosecutors charged Hunsicker with serious financial crimes: wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, falsifying documents, and aggravated identity theft. The accusation is that she deliberately misled investors about Castle's financial health. presenting falsified income statements, fake audit reports, and bogus bank records to inflate revenue, cash on hand, and growth prospects. Industry watchers now regard the collapse of Castle as one of the single largest fraud scandals in fashion tech. The fall was swift, from high investor interest and bold promises to sudden shutdown, mass layoffs, and criminal indictment. For many former employees, the closure came without warning or severance. Analysts suggest that the company expanded too fast, relied too heavily on future hype, and ignored red flags of mounting losses and growing liabilities. The unraveling included legal entanglements beyond just bankruptcy. In the end, what began as a modern rethinking of fashion consumption turned into a dramatic collapse fueled by misrepresentation, poor oversight, and overambition. This shows that bold ideas and disruptive models still must rest on honest financials, sustainable operations, and real value, not on inflated projections and marketing gloss. Up next is a brand that shoppers loved for style and prestige, but now each purchase comes with a huge question mark. Number 2. Farfetch. The journey of Farfetch Limited, a prominent online luxury fashion marketplace, in recent years has been marked by rapid rise and steep struggles, culminating in a major acquisition and a class action lawsuit. In December, likely 2023, Farfetch reached a deal with Coupang Inc., the South Korean e-commerce giant, for an acquisition reportedly valued at $500 million, intending to take Farfetch private. Farfetch's platform has long been positioned as a hub for luxury brands, boutiques, and high-end labels, offering a global e-commerce marketplace for consumers seeking premium apparel, accessories, and designer goods. As such, the acquisition by Coupang was presented as combining Farfetch's luxury ecosystem with Coupang's logistical strength and e-commerce infrastructure, allegedly to deliver exceptional experiences for customers and brands globally. However, even as the acquisition was in motion, a cloud hung over Farfetch. A class action lawsuit filed by shareholders in late 2023 alleged that the company had made materially false and misleading statements about its business, operations, and growth prospects during the period between March 9, 2023 and August 17, 2023. The complaint centers on several key allegations. Shareholders claim that Farfetch failed to disclose a significant slowdown in growth in its two largest markets, the United States and China. The suit also asserts that Farfetch misrepresented progress in a major collaboration with Reebok, claiming the partnership was on track while allegedly hiding onboarding challenges that impacted its launch. Furthermore, the lawsuit argues that Farfetch downplayed problems with its supply chain and inventory management, problems that, combined with weak demand and the troubled Reebok integration, seriously undercut revenue and gross merchandise value growth. Because of these failures to disclose and alleged misstatements, according to plaintiffs, Farfetch was unlikely to meet market expectations for second quarter 2023 financial results and full year 2023 revenue guidance. In their complaint, shareholders seek compensation for losses incurred, arguing that they paid inflated prices for Farfetch securities based on misleading information. The case also attracted several law firms. Investors were encouraged to come forward to participate as lead plaintiffs. For Farfetch, the lawsuit added legal uncertainty on top of financial trouble. The company's stock dropped dramatically, a sign that market confidence had eroded. In response to the lawsuit and financial distress, Farfetch acknowledged inability to meet certain obligations, in particular for convertible note holders who held debt due in 2027. Some note holders filed petitions in the Cayman Islands, where Farfetch's holding entity was registered, to liquidate the company, citing insolvency and requesting independent liquidators be appointed to manage affairs for creditors. Despite the acquisition by Coupang, the legal and financial fallout remained complex. The assets acquired are separate from the old equity and CS convertible notes, meaning many original investors, particularly note holders, face likely losses. The case underlines that even well-known platforms must balance ambition with transparency, realistic projections, and solid financial grounding. Otherwise, shareholders and partners may end up holding the bag. Next on the list is a label whose signature pieces are being pulled back from shelves, forcing shoppers to question every stitch and seam. Number 1. Burberry. Burberry has recently faced a deep crisis in demand and brand identity that put its business under heavy strain. In the financial year ending March 2024, the company reported that revenue dropped by 4% compared with the previous period. Sales tumbled especially sharply in the final quarter, with sales down by 12%. The decline in demand was most pronounced in two of its biggest markets, the United States and China. International weakness, along with general slowdown in the global luxury goods market, weighed heavily on Burberry's performance. Burberry's problems have not just been external, but internal as well. Former management attempted to shift the brand from its traditional British heritage roots toward more fashion-forward, high-luxury positioning. That strategy included raising prices steeply and expanding into more avant-garde designs and high-end accessories. But this repositioning alienated a significant portion of its traditional customer base, those who expected classic quality, timeless outerwear, and the heritage style associated with Burberry. As a result of falling demand and declining brand appeal, financial indicators turned grim. The firm saw a dramatic drop in profit. Adjusted operating profit plunged by 34%. The company's market value and reputation took a hit. In one major brand value ranking, Burberry lost nearly $2 billion compared with the prior year. This drop in value reflects shrinking confidence by investors and consumers in what Burberry stands for, exposing how vulnerable even an iconic luxury brand can be when its identity becomes muddled. The pressure reached a turning point mid-2024 when the company dismissed its then CEO Jonathan Akeroyd and replaced him with Joshua Schulman, the former head of another fashion company. This marked an acknowledgement within Burberry that prior strategy had failed. The leadership change came alongside public warnings that the firm might lay off hundreds of staff and restructure. The company also withdrew its dividend payment, a clear signal of financial strain and revised priorities. Under the new management, Burberry launched a cost-cutting plan and promised to refocus itself on its heritage staples: classic trench coats, outerwear, scarves, the items that once defined the brand. The plan also looked to streamline operations, reduce overheads, and bring back consistency to what Burberry offers its customers. However, the challenge remains enormous. And in a global market where luxury demand is shifting fast, uncertainty remains high. Buying from these brands now is risky for both money and ethics. Fraud, lawsuits, financial instability, and loss of trust are serious warning signs. Customers deserve honesty, reliability, and clear values from the brands they support. Choosing alternatives that maintain transparency and respect for their consumers is safer and smarter. In the fast-changing fashion world, spending wisely means backing companies that deliver on their promises and protect their reputation. Don't let your money support chaos. If this breakdown changed how you think about luxury, let us know in the comments. Which of these brands stood out to you most? Do you think any of them deserves what they are getting? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive into the hidden dynamics of wealth, status, and the brands desperately trying to capture both. Because in luxury, nothing is permanent.